dance in the drifting sand. Every stone remembers stories, every tear held in his hands. On Mount Carmel, place of prayer, I lift your name, I lift your cares. When you feel you're all alone, He is near, you're not on your own. On Mount Carmel, I'm praying for you.
Welcome back, and we're excited to share with you a new program that we are launching for January 1st, 2026. It's a special year in the life of Franciscans as they celebrate the 800th anniversary of the death of their founder, St. Francis. I have the privilege of visiting St. Francis in Assisi and spending some time with him there in prayer. This paved the way for a new series of monthly exercises to lead us deeper into the heart of Jesus. After spending some time with St. Francis, I had a mountaintop experience at Monte Cassino, where I felt the inspiration of St. Benedict reminding me about the importance of structure and a rule of life. In essence, St. Francis was influenced by the Benedictine spirituality and received practical support from them, but he established a new form of religious life focused on evangelical mission. It is this blend of the styles of both saints that bring us to 3 and 30 freedom, where we find structure in our daily life and poverty in our approach to charity and how we love those God has given us to love in our daily walk with Him. January is a fitting month to focus on structure, and I've designed our handout to fit a typical binder so you can print out your workbook if you desire. Or if you prefer, you can use your own journal and you can just browse the PDF package on your phone and answer the questions in your journal book. When you sign up for our monthly emails, you'll receive a PDF package with printable pages to add to your binder. This becomes your workbook for the year. I learned from our Advent retreat in 2025 how important it is to look back and assess my progress, to bring forward what is virtuous and works well with my mental, physical, and spiritual growth, and to leave behind the habits that derail my progress in these areas. I recognized as I was trying to put together my thoughts for the whole year of 2025 that I didn't track enough of my progress throughout the year to really assess what was working and what wasn't. And that brings me to the big change you will see in 2026. The workbook is a place that we can be really honest about how we are progressing through each month. And I'm going to pull apart the key elements for January and what we're going to be working on this month. So let's see what we have in store. So a rule of life is a framework of practices and relational rhythms that provide structure and guides a person towards their deepest desires and spiritual growth. It is not a list of rigid rules, but a singular plan for intentional living, much like a trellis that supports a vine and helps it grow and bear fruit. A rule of life helps align daily habits and choices with one's core values and purpose. We're going to start small. So as with creating any new set of goals, it's tempting to overreach and attempt to live like a monk from day one. But that is a strategy that is bound to fail. We want to start where we are, not where we should be. Unrealistic goals just leave us discouraged and disillusioned. We want to focus on doable, enjoyable goals that move us forward in our spiritual formation. For example, if you're beginning prayer, perhaps that means that you set aside 10 minutes a day to read a psalm and offer a prayer. 10 minutes is a wonderful start. When we do that day after day, and we have a pattern and we become to form this as a habit, then we can add another 5 minutes because that habit has already been formed. So we want to start where we are at and move forward at a deliberate but relaxed pace. We also want to be specific in our practices. So, for instance, on Sundays, if that's something that you really want to change, you want to have an experience of Sundays being more God focused, less of shopping and things like that, then you want to be specific. On Mass or on Sundays, I go to Mass. So you'll write that in your rule. On Sundays, I pray the glorious mysteries. On Sundays, I call a family member. On Sundays, I sit with my book of the saints and read a story from the lives of the saints. You want to make sure that it's very specific so that when you're looking at your rule of life, you can go back and have that as a framework and almost be able to check it off. When we do this over and over again, it becomes part of our identity. And that is our goal, for this rule of life to be part of our identity. We also want to consider our personality. So if you're an introvert, you might want to carve out plenty of time to be alone and in the quiet. And if you're an extrovert, you may want to reach out to a group of Catholic friends that perhaps walk and pray the rosary, or maybe a prayer group at your church, so that you're really feeding into your extroverted personality. But you also want to look at a blend between the two. So you don't want to silo yourself in one or the other. Part of this is that we want to be, yes, structured like St. Benedict, but we also want to love like St. Francis. And St. Francis certainly went beyond the walls and reached out to his neighbors. So we want to have that balance. We need to consider our season of life and stage of discipleship. So if you have little kids, you're going to start very small and really go easy on yourself. And remember that your children could be your monastic bells to remind you that your time is not your own and shape you into a person of love. If you're new to following Jesus and just beginning to learn about the practices of silence and solitude, you're not going to copy someone who's 20 years down the road, because they have built that life of prayer. So we're going to take it one step at a time in your journey. We also want to keep a healthy balance of upstream and downstream practices. So what is that? If you look at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a mountain, and on the right-hand side, you're going to see some stars. Think of the mountain like Saint Benedict. He had some very, very strict rules when it came to fasting, when it came to recreational activity, when it came to praying the opening and close of the day. There are very, very sort of strict things that he had in place. If you think of the stars, I equate the stars with St. Francis and his poetry. His poetry about the sun, about the stars, about nature. We want to have the balance between working hard and feeding our soul. So there is going to be something in your life that feeds your soul. We want to make sure that it is spiritually sound, but that it really does speak to your heart and your imagination and give you life. So that balance between working hard, which is important, but also feeding your soul with what it is that makes your soul hum. So as I mentioned in January, we're going to lean a little harder into the life of St. Benedict and structure. January is a wonderful month to launch new habits and to launch the structure that we need to sort of kickstart this year. So based on that, I took a look at St. Benedict's rules of life and really outlined them very, very briefly. So this is part of your package. You can read over this. The first is obedience. Then we go to stability, conversion of life, and humility. Humility is very, very, there's 12 steps in humility. So we will flush that out later in a different month. But for now, we just want to kind of look at very briefly these 8 stages. We have moderation and balance, hospitality, community, and mutual obedience, and then stewardship. And in the next slide, we're going to look at questions that pertain personally to us and how this relates to our life. Okay, now that we briefly looked over St. Benedict's rules, we want to ask ourselves questions that are going to be specific to our own life, to developing a rule for ourselves based on that outline. Looking at the first one is obedience. So according to your vocation in life, who do I need to be obedient to? If you're in family life, obviously, if you're married, it's going to be your husband. You are going to be obedient to your state of marriage. You're going to be obedient to the call of being possibly a mother within marriage. You're going to be obedient to, obviously, the commandments of the church and the catechism. And maybe you have a spiritual director or confessor that you are obedient to. So you're going to write those things down. In your stability, according to your state of life, what are your current markers of stability? That would look like your job, your family, weekly mass. So those things that you already have in place that you do that count towards your stability, you're going to write those down. Now, where do you desire to grow in your stability as you develop your rule of life? For instance, do you want to be more active? That might be exercise. Do you want to grow in your prayer time? Do you want to focus on eating healthy? Do you want to grow in knowledge? These are examples of developmental goals that you can put in the stability column. In conversion of life, what commitments to your continued conversion do you already have in place? So that would be weekly mass. That would be monthly confession, if that's something that you do. If you have a spiritual director, that would be something that you already commit to in your continued conversion. Daily rosary would be continued conversion. And then after you've written down all the things that you already do, where do you hope to grow? What do you want to implement into your continued conversion? So perhaps that is maybe you want to follow Bible in a Year with Father Mike Schmitz. You want to know more about sacred scripture. Maybe you feel like you've been called to journal, but you haven't done that yet. So maybe that might be something you want to add. Those little things that you want to add to your life that is going to help you in that continued conversion, you're going to write in that space. And on the right-hand side of your screen, we have humility. These are kind of tough questions, but they're necessary. How do you see yourself in regard to the level of humility you sense you have? So how do you handle praise or criticism? Do you speak more than you listen to others? Are you quick to judge? Where do you desire to grow in humility? And how can you grow in this way? So that's what you're going to write down in that space. Under moderation and balance, how would you say your current state of moderation and balance exists? Are there areas in your life that calls for greater temperance? What areas of your life are you happy with regarding balance and moderation? What areas can you identify that need change? And finally, under hospitality, would you consider yourself a person who enjoys caring for others? Is your home set up to welcome visitors? How do you feel when people want to connect with you? Do you guard your time too closely and have little time to share with others? How would you like to grow in this area within your rule of life? So you're going to write those things down in the column next to hospitality. Under community and mutual obedience, when you make commitments to others, do you find you break them easily? Is your volunteer life balanced? Do you do too much or too little in your faith community? Do you pray for others when you offer to do so? How do you desire to grow in community with others in your faith? And under stewardship, how would you measure the care and concern you have for your own belongings and those entrusted to you by God? Do you clean your home on a regular basis? Do you care for your property? Do you thrift items or repurpose or give them away? Are you careful about the way that you treat your body, nourishing and exercising the gift God has given you in your body? How would you like to be a better steward of God's gifts? In our Jubilee Year of Hope last year, we did a monthly page on points of hope, those moments of hope sparked by the Holy Spirit to really encourage us each and every month. And looking back on that in my Advent retreat, I really, really enjoyed that exercise. And I felt that that's something that I want to bring into our group's stuff in 2026. So we are going to do a weekly gratitude and joy. It's a page that you can add into your binder. And you can answer these questions, or if you have different questions that prompt you to really keep a vision of gratitude and joy each week, then by all means write those questions down. So for the prompts for this month anyways, our weekly gratitude and joy. So when did I feel most content or at peace this week? Where did I see God act this week in my life? And how do I feel about my rule of life progress this week? Again, just keeping in mind that when we're honest and we're writing these things down, we can reflect if we are actually entering into living out our rule of life, or if, maybe we have one of those weeks where we just kind of gloss over it. But I think that this tracker in gratitude and joy is going to help us to fix our eyes on what God is doing in our week and to bring that back into our journal time. In January, we're going to train ourselves to write a few things down on a daily basis. Again, we're in formation mode, so we want to make sure that we're engaged each and every day in living out our rule of life. So on the left-hand side, we have our daily goals and actions. So what is my top priority for today? How can I reflect God's love to others today? And what challenge did I face and how did I handle it? Those things are really important. When we don't handle things well, we have information about ourselves and why we didn't handle it well. Maybe we omitted praying that day. Maybe we didn't have our eyes fixed on Jesus. So having these things written down and being able to look at it is a really great way to measure where we're at. And on the right-hand side, we have our daily schedule. So writing down the day, what we have in our schedule, again, priority, what we want to do, and any notes that we want to take. When we look and take stock each day of where we're at, our days don't slip away as quickly as they would if we're not noticing them. And I think we need to train our eyes to notice each and every day as a gift from God and to really see, what did we do to enter in fully into this day? And did we adhere to the things that we set up in our rule of life? In this slide, we have our daily habits progress and our weekly habits progress. Last year, we really focused on healthy eating, movement, prayer, and time management. So I want to bring those great habits forward and continue to track and notice what we're doing in our daily life. So you might want to make some additions or subtractions as to what you want to bring forward into 2026. You might want to elevate your movement or your prayer or do something different with your time management. Introduce new foods to your eating. Whatever you want to do, you're going to put that into your rule in your notes. And then this is how we track our progress. So this is just an example of my, Monday. Under eating, I typically do, when I'm on track, I do intermittent fasting. So if I've done intermittent fasting and I've eaten well that day, then I get a check mark. On Monday, I did not move, so I have an X there. On my prayer time, I have a check. I've prayed all my prayers, so I have morning, noon, and evening prayers. And if all of those are done, then I get a check mark. And in my time management, I consider not having a lot of screen time, not scrolling, having meaningful conversations with my loved ones, or reading something that really helps me to grow spiritually or mentally. Those are all things within my time management. Or I'm actually taking another pottery class. I am taking a crocheting class this January. So these things are the things that you want to put into time management. Healthy things, learning new skills, all of those things get a check mark under time management when we have accomplished those things. Then we're going to take that daily habits progress and we're going to empty it into the weekly habit progress. So as you can see in week 1, my healthy eating was almost on track. My movement, I did really well. My prayer, I prayed all my prayers for week 1. In time management, I just haven't filled that out yet, but I wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of what we're going to be looking at as the days and weeks progress. What I really enjoyed doing last year in December was looking over what I did successfully and what I didn't do successfully, kind of editing and making those changes to bring into the new year. So this is going to help us on a weekly habits for sure, seeing our weekly habits, to be able to see, okay, where are we failing here? Where are we lacking a little bit? Where do we need to step up a little bit at a glance? Just having that color wheel really makes us to see, at a glance where we're at. And so these are going to be part and parcel of our January package. In your January package, you also have some January journal prompts for reflection. This is totally optional. I really enjoy journal prompts. I like to sit and think and really invite the Holy Spirit in to where I'm failing and where I need to grow. And so I just sort of highlighted this as one of my January journal prompts that I'm going to use. In the yellow highlight there, it says, how does my definition of success align with my current goals? So that's something that I'm going to be working on in January. That's my journal prompt. You can use any of these journal prompts or none of these journal prompts. But if you feel like you need something to sort of just get your thoughts going, to answer some questions, then I have some prompts for you there. And then in January, I've already filled in a couple of areas that I really want to put as priority in my changes. So I want to add more movement into my daily activity, and I want to eat healthier. Those are the two things that I really, really need to do going into this year. And I have 3 other things that I'm going to be filling in, but I know for sure those are the 2 top things that I'm going to be taking into January. So that's just an example of where you can go with those sheets that you'll find in your package. You can read a little bit more about my prayer time with St. Francis and St. Benedict on the website. So in our 3 and 30 Freedom January tab, those stories will be there, as well as some pictures of being in that space. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how atomic habits have been brought into the mix of this year. When I was in Monte Cassino and I was praying for help, really, for tracking the rule of life, once I got that message from St. Benedict about being more disciplined and having a rule of life, I'm like, okay, how do I even do this? Where do I start with this habit tracking? And I really had no idea. But when I came back from Italy, on my phone was the Atomic Habits audiobook. Now, I do not subscribe to audiobooks. I don't think I've ever even really listened to an audiobook, certainly not on my phone. I typically read paper books. I like to highlight and underline and do all those things. So for this to be on my phone was very odd, but I did see it as a gift from God. And when I was walking in my village, I put my headphones on and I would listen to this book read to me. And as I'm listening to James Clear unpack really what it takes to do something over and over and over again, and how it becomes an identity, and how that identity then shapes and forms the life that you want, I'm thinking, this is Catholic 101. I mean, you can step into any century in the past, look at the life of a saint, and basically what they did was those good habits over and over and over again, which builds virtue. It is so deeply Catholic that it's like, wow. James Clear is not, that I know of, a Christian. He's certainly not Catholic. So I do ask you to keep him in your prayers, because God can do anything. And I really believe that it was a gift. His research and his tables, his formulas, all of those things, they're part and parcel of this book. And I'm going to use them as he encourages me to use them. As a person who has purchased both books, then I am available. I get to have these charts. So it's kind of going to be a bit of a book study. Not that you have to get these books, but that I am going to be bringing these books into our year and hopefully making it a little bit easier to track different things and the ways that we want to grow. So I'm going to be using the science, the modern science behind the Atomic Habits book and the workbook, and really seeing that it is a step back in time when you look at virtue versus vice. And really, that's what it's about. But, in modern day times, people don't want to think of Jesus and look back at the church and what the church has taught for centuries and centuries. This is a modern version of that teaching, but I'm going to be extracting these nuggets of gold, these little threads of wisdom, and intertwining them into each and every one of our months as well. So I wanted to update you on that. Thank you for joining me for this sneak peek at our 3 and 30 Freedom January edition. If you want to receive a PDF copy of this program that you can put in your binder and start tracking, then by all means visit our website and you can sign up for the form that will ask for this PDF to be emailed to you. I also encourage you, if you're following this program, to have an accountability partner. So again, we have a group on Zoom that meets once a month. We break into groups and we're going to be accountable to one another. But really this works. This doesn't work in a silo. This works alongside of somebody else. So if you have a friend, if it's your husband, your wife, maybe your spiritual director, whoever it is that you have in your life that you can be honest with, that you can ask to be accountable to, then I really ask you to reach out to that person and ask them to join you in this journey and at least be a sounding board for the exercises that we're going to be doing each month. Until next time, God bless.